Chapter 10, The Musician's Daughter. The following morning, the students and apprentices gathered around the dining room table and laughed about their impromptu sleepover while they enjoyed breakfast. Even Tangerina admitted she had fun listening to Bristol read The Tales of Tidbit Twitch. Madam Weatherbury was delighted her pupils were getting along so well, but naturally she reminded them how important it was to get rest on nights before their lessons, and asked them to save future sleepovers for special occasions. Halfway through breakfast, Mrs. V entered the dining room and presented Madam Weatherbury with a black envelope. "This just arrived for you, madam," Mrs. V said. The envelope immediately caught Bristol's attention because it was scaled like a reptile's skin and sealed with wax the color of dried blood. Madam Weatherbury went pale the minute she noticed the envelope's strange texture. She opened it with a butter knife and quickly unfolded the message written inside. "The post delivers all the way out here?" Xanthus asked. Tangerina rolled her eyes. "It's not from the human post. It's from the magic post," she explained. "When you place your envelope in a magic mailbox and close the lid behind it, the letter is instantly transported to the mailbox it's addressed to." "It works with other small objects too," Skylene said, and slumped in her chair. "I'm still waiting for my gerbil to be sent back." "Wow, instant mail?" Xanthus said. "What a concept." While the others talked about the magic post, Bristol's eyes never left Madam Weatherbury. She assumed the black envelope contained bad news because the fairy's posture became stiff as she read it. Once she finished reading the note, Madam Weatherbury folded it and put it back into the envelope. Her eyes filled with concern, and she stared off into space. "Madam Weatherbury, is something wrong?" Bristol asked. "Oh, not at all," Madam Weatherbury said, but she didn't elaborate further. "Who wrote to you?" Bristol asked. "Just an old friend," she said. "Unfortunately, our mutual acquaintance has been battling a terrible illness, and my friend was writing to update me on her progress. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to write her back before we begin today's lessons. I'll meet you outside in just a few minutes." Madam Weatherbury held the black envelope by the corner, and a burst of violet flames incinerated the message. The fairy excused herself from the dining table and headed to her office on the second floor. Although Madam Weatherbury had said there wasn't a problem, Bristol knew their instructor wasn't being honest with them. Madam Weatherbury left with the same intensity she had expressed after Bristol mentioned the Northern Kingdom the day before. "I'm glad you asked her that," Skylene told Bristol. "I've always wondered who sends Madam Weatherbury those letters, but I never wanted to pry." "You mean they're sent frequently?" Bristol asked. "Almost every day," Skylene said. "But if you ask me, I don't think they're actually updates on her sick friend." "What do you think they are?" Bristol asked. Skylene grinned. "I think Madam Weatherbury has a secret admirer." Everyone around the dining table laughed at Skylene's theory except for Bristol. She didn't think Madam Weatherbury had an admirer, but the fairy definitely had a secret. "The last time I had a secret admirer, dragons roamed the earth. Ha ha!" Mrs. V quipped. "Get it? Because I'm old." Even with an explanation, her young audience didn't crack a smile. "Sorry if all my jokes were good. I certainly wouldn't have this job. Ha ha ha!" The housekeeper cleared the dining table and stepped into the kitchen. Once she was gone, Emeralda turned to Tangerina and Skylene with a sharp look. "Are any of her jokes good?" she asked. Tangerina and Skylene slowly shook their heads in agony. like they had been victims of Mrs. V's insufferable humor for too long. "No," Tangerina groaned. "Not a single one." After they finished breakfast, the children waited for Madam Weatherbury outside on the castle's front steps. It was taking their instructor much longer to respond to the letter than she had estimated, and Bristol became even more suspicious. Just when they were about to check on their teacher, the students and apprentices heard a peculiar noise coming from a distance. It was a compilation of horns, drums, and cymbals that played the same quirky tune over and over again. They all looked toward the edge of the property, and a colorful caravan emerged from the hedge barrier. It was bright blue with red wheels and a yellow roof. Instead of the caravan being pulled by horses, a man and a woman sitting in the driver's seat propelled the contraption forward by moving pedals with their feet. The strangers wore makeup and flamboyant clothing. The man had a mustache, a gold earring in his right ear, and a tall top hat with a large red feather. The woman wore a scarf over her head, several beaded necklaces, and a long, flowing dress. As they pedaled toward the castle, the gears triggered instruments attached to the vehicle, and the repetitive tune was played. Identical signs on both sides of the caravan said, "The Goose Troop." The couple steered their vehicle to the front steps of the castle and then pulled the brakes. When the caravan came to a complete stop, the music finally stopped as well. The visitors seemed relieved to see the children outside, but the students stared at the extravagant wagon with wide, curious eyes. "Hello there," the man said and tipped his top hat. "Is this Madam Weatherbury's school for the magically inclined?" "It's just Madam Weatherbury's Academy of Magic now," Tangerina said. "She decided less was more," Skylene added. "Oh, that's terrific," the woman said, and then called into the caravan behind her. "Lucy, get your things. We're here." The vehicle's back door was aggressively kicked open, and a girl about 13 years old jumped down from inside. She was small and plump. Her hair was short and curly, and she had a round, rosy face. The girl wore a black bowler hat, an oversized black jumpsuit, big black boots, and a bottle cap necklace. She carried a small suitcase made from a taxidermy porcupine, and a canteen made from a beaver skull was draped over her shoulder. The odd girl scowled at the majestic castle in front of her, like she was greatly underwhelmed by it. "Well, this place is obnoxiously cheerful," she said. "Excuse me, but who are you?" Tangerina asked. The girl turned to the students on the front steps. She glared at them with a raised eyebrow like they were just as disappointing as the castle. "The name's Lucy," she said. "You don't recognize me?" "Recognize you from what?" Skylene asked. "I happen to be a famous tambourine player," Lucy said, and pointed to the sign on the caravan. "Perhaps you've heard of my family's band?" "Wait a second," Tangerina said with a patronizing laugh. "Your name is Lucy Goose?" The young tambourine player turned bright red and sent Tangerina a scathing look. "It's pronounced GOOSE," Lucy said. "But you would know that if you had any class. So why don't you just shut your mouth and mind all that beeswax? Someone wearing honeycomb has no right to be that high and mighty, ever." Bristol, Xanthus, and Emeralda laughed at Lucy's remarks before they could stop themselves. Tangerina was agitated and her bumblebees buzzed aggressively. Don't listen to her, Tangerina, Skylene whispered. She's dressed like she just came from a funeral. I'm sorry, did the walking puddle just insult my clothes? Lucy asked. I'll have you know I won this hat after arm wrestling a goblin, and I removed the caps on my necklace from bottles with my bare teeth. And then I drank them with a tribe of trolls. What's the coolest thing you've done lately? Evaporate? The children were floored by Lucy's comments. The girls' parents shook their heads and sighed at their daughter's rudeness. Please forgive Lucy. She's just a little nervous, Mrs. GOOSE said. Lucy, you promised us you were going to be nice. This is no way to make friends at your new school. They started it, Lucy mumbled. Hold on, Tangerina exclaimed. She's staying here? Mr. and Mrs. GOOSE glanced at each other with uncertainty. Actually, that's what we're here to speak with Madam Weatherbury about, Mr. GOOSE said. Is she around? She's in her office on the second floor, Bristol said. I can take you there if you'd like. That would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. GOOSE said. Bristol escorted the GOOSE family up the front steps of the castle. Lucy shot Tangerina one last dirty look before stepping inside. Don't worry, honeypot, she said. Madam Weatherbury doesn't want someone like me at her school. I'll be out of your sticky hair before you know it. The Gooses followed Bristol into the entrance hall and up the floating stairs to the second floor. As they went, Lucy winced at everything she saw, like the castle was so ugly it hurt her eyes. Bristol knocked on Madam Weatherbury's door and peeked inside. The fairy was pacing in front of her bubbling fireplace, obviously troubled by something. Madam Weatherbury, Bristol said. The fairy wasn't expecting company and jumped at the sound of her name. Yes, Bristol? She asked. There are people here to see you, Bristol said. They've brought their daughter to the castle hoping you'll take her as a student. Oh, really? Madam Weatherbury was surprised to hear it. Very well, please show them in. Bristol ushered the Gooses into the office and then left to give the family privacy as they talked with Madam Weatherbury. She figured the conversation would delay lessons even further, so Bristol headed to her bedroom to retrieve a book to pass the time. As she searched her shelves, Bristol heard a peculiar murmur coming from somewhere nearby. She followed the sound like a dog following a scent and realized it was coming from behind the books on a bottom shelf. Bristol moved the books off the shelf and found a small hole in the wall behind them. Curious, Bristol peeked through the hole and discovered it peered directly into Madam Weatherbury's office on the second floor below. She saw that Mr. and Mrs. Goose were sitting across from Madam Weatherbury at her glass desk. Lucy wandered around the office and inspected the fairy's belongings while the adults chatted, but the girl didn't seem impressed by anything she found. Bristol didn't want to snoop on the family's conversation, but Mrs. Goose said something that instantly caught her attention. It all started with the ravens, she said. That's when we knew Lucy was going to be special. The ravens? Madam Weatherbury asked. Oh my. Mrs. Goose nodded. While I was pregnant with Lucy, the birds started showing up outside our home. We figured they were passing by as they flew south for the winter, but even as the seasons changed, the ravens stayed. The larger Lucy grew in my womb, the more ravens flocked to our house. My husband did everything he could to get rid of them, but they never left. The night I went into labor, all the birds started screeching outside. It was deafening and maddening to listen to. But as soon as Lucy was born, all the ravens flew away. To this day, we don't know what they were doing there. Madam Weatherbury rubbed her chin as she listened to the story. Bristol could tell the fairy knew exactly what the birds were doing at their house, but she didn't want to share that information just yet. "How interesting," Madam Weatherbury said. "I imagine even stranger phenomena began happening shortly after she was born." "Strange, to say the least," Mr. Goose said, "and it continued through her childhood. It was all very eerie, but harmless for the most part. The button eyes on her stuffed animals turned into real eyes and watched us as we moved around the house. We had to put a cover over Lucy's crib because she would levitate when she took naps. If we turned our back to her while she was taking a bath, we'd find the whole tub suddenly filled with frogs." "The instances were inconvenient, but simple enough to handle back then," Mrs. Goose said. "But lately, things have gotten completely out of hand. We're traveling musicians and have performed all over the world. But there are places we can never return to because of the things Lucy has done." "Such as?" Madam Weatherbury asked. "For instance, this one night we were performing at a pub in the Western Kingdom," Mr. Goose recalled. "The crowd had a lot to drink and became rowdy. They started booing us and Lucy got upset. She shook her fist at them and all of the alcohol turned into dog urine. People were gagging and vomiting all over the pub. Another time we were performing a private show for aristocrats in the Northern Kingdom," Mrs. Goose recalled. "Lucy was in the middle of a tambourine solo when a duchess in the front row began to yawn. It hurt Lucy's feelings, and the duchess's braids suddenly turned into snakes. A few months ago, we were performing in a small theater in the Southern Kingdom," Mr. Goose said. "At the end of the night, the owner of the theater refused to pay us. He claimed our instruments were out of tune and hurt the audience's ears. As we drove off, the whole theater imploded behind us, as if it had been flattened by an earthquake, but all the buildings nearby stayed perfectly intact." "My word," Madam Weatherbury said. "For the record, I'm proud of that last one," Lucy said. "That jerk had it coming." "Luckily, no one has suspected any of these things were Lucy's fault," Mrs. Goose said. "Nonetheless, our act is gaining a reputation for tragedy. We're worried people are going to realize what Lucy is and try to hurt her." "That's why we brought her here," Mr. Goose explained. "We love our Lucy more than anything, but we can't take care of her anymore. It's just too much for us." Bristol knew this must be heartbreaking for Lucy to hear. The girl stopped searching through Madam Weatherbury's things and went very still. She turned and gazed at the bubbles in the fireplace so the adults wouldn't see the tears forming in her eyes. "How did you learn about my academy?" Madam Weatherbury inquired. "My brother is a minstrel for royalty in the Eastern Kingdom," Mrs. Goose said. "He was hiding in the next room when you recently visited Queen Industria. He heard you discussing plans for your Academy of Magic and how you asked the Queen for permission to recruit students in her kingdom. He knows about our troubles with Lucy and wrote to us immediately to tell us about your school. We spent the last 3 days in the in-between looking for it." "I see," Madam Weatherbury said. "Well, Mr. and Mrs. Goose, forgive me, but I have to be very frank with you. My academy isn't designed for students like your daughter. The gathering of macabre animals at her birth, the unsettling phenomena that occurred when she was younger, and the problems that she's been causing lately are not expressions of magic." Mr. and Mrs. Goose looked to each other and both let out a long, exacerbated breath. We're painfully aware of that, Madam Weatherbury, Mr. Goosey said. There are two sides to the magical community, and it's very clear which side our daughter belongs to. But we were hoping you might make an exception for Lucy. Please, Madam Weatherbury, Mrs. Goosey pleaded. She's a good kid who needs a good home that understands her. My husband and I just can't do it anymore. We're desperate for someone to help us. The Gooseys' request wasn't a simple matter. Madam Weatherbury went quiet and leaned back in her glass chair as she considered. Tears ran down Lucy's round face after hearing her parents' plea to get rid of her. Bristol's heart ached as she watched Lucy wipe her tears away before anyone noticed them. After a few moments of careful consideration, Madam Weatherbury got to her feet and approached Lucy. She leaned down to the girl with a kind smile and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. It may be a challenge, but challenges are what life is all about, Madam Weatherbury said. I would love for you to join our academy, Lucy. I can't promise I'll always know how to assist you like I will the other students, but I promise I'll always do my best. Lucy was shocked. Obviously, acceptance to Madam Weatherbury's academy was the last thing she had expected, and the very last thing she wanted. Lucy's parents, on the other hand, sighed with relief and embraced each other in celebration. "Wait!" Lucy exclaimed. "I can't stay. I don't belong here." "Lucy, this is a wonderful thing," Mrs. Goosey said. "Madam Weatherbury will provide you a much better home for you than your father and I ever could." "But I don't want to live at the academy," Lucy professed. "I want to live with you. We're not just a family. We're the Goosey troupe. You can't have a band without its star tambourine player." "Actually, your uncle is going to join us on the road," Mr. Goosey said. "He's going to take over all your solos with his fiddle." His fiddle? She was outraged. Lucy pulled her parents to the side of the office to have a private word, but Bristol was still perfectly in earshot. "But Mom, Dad, today is my birthday," Lucy whispered to them. "You can't abandon me on my birthday." "This is for your own good, Lucy," Mrs. Goosey said. "One day you'll understand." Mr. and Mrs. Goosey kissed their daughter goodbye and profusely shook Mrs. Weatherbury's hand. From her bedroom window, Bristol saw the couple return to their colorful caravan outside. They pedaled the vehicle into the distance and disappeared through the hedge barrier without a hint of remorse for leaving their daughter behind. Madam Weatherbury escorted Lucy to the third floor, and Bristol peered into the corridor as they walked by. The castle had already created a new room for Lucy, and a sixth door had appeared next to Bristol's bedroom. "This will be your room, Lucy," Madam Weatherbury said. "I hope you'll be comfortable inside. The castle grows bedrooms based on the number of occupants, and this space is usually furnished for the specific needs of—" Yeah, Lucy said. "Thanks a million, Madam Weatherbury. If you don't mind, I'd like to be alone now." Lucy entered her bedroom and slammed the door behind her. As soon as it was shut, Bristol and Madam Weatherbury could hear the girl sobbing on the other side. "Do you think she'll be all right?" Bristol asked. "It isn't going to be an easy adjustment for her," Madam Weatherbury said. "I think we should postpone today's lessons to after lunch so Lucy has time to get settled. I'll let the others know." Madam Weatherbury left the corridor to tell the other students about the change of plans. Bristol stayed in her doorway and listened to Lucy cry in her bedroom. She knew exactly what it felt like to be rejected by a parent, and she tried to think of a way to make her new floor mate feel better. Bristol realized there was very little she could say to ease Lucy's troubles. But perhaps there was something she could make. Bristol hurried down the spiral steps to the first level of the castle, down the hall, through the dining room, and into the kitchen. Bristol hadn't seen the castle's kitchen yet and was surprised to find it was 4 times the size of the kitchen at the Evergreen house. Mrs. V was in the middle of cooking lunch, and Bristol was taken aback by all the magic that was going into the meal's preparation. Fruit, vegetables, spices, and utensils floated through the air. There were bowls that stirred ingredients on their own. Food was chopped and diced by hovering knives. Oven doors opened and closed without assistance. And trays of baked goods removed themselves from the oven's heat. Mrs. V stood in the center of the kitchen and conducted the magic around her like it was a symphony of invisible chefs. "Well, hello there, dear," Mrs. V said when she noticed Bristol. "What brings you to my neck of the woods? Did you need a snack?" "No, I'm still full from breakfast, thank you," Bristol said. "Mrs. V, I was hoping I could use your kitchen to make something by myself." "You mean on your own?" Mrs. V asked. "You're not trying to take my job, are you? Because I'm warning you, it's not as glamorous as I make it look." "Ha ha ha!" "Oh no, it's just a family recipe," she said. "I could make it in my sleep. I'd hate to interrupt you while you're in the middle of cooking lunch, though. I promise I'll stay out of your way." "It's no problem at all," Mrs. V said. "Family recipes are always welcome unless a family is in the recipe." "Go ahead and help yourself to whatever you need." A little more than an hour later, Bristol carried 2 forks and a freshly baked chocolate cake to the 3rd floor. Mrs. V didn't have any birthday candles, so Bristol had to borrow 13 candles from different candelabras and lanterns throughout the castle. Each candle was a different shape and color, but it did the trick. Bristol took a deep breath as she stood outside Lucy's bedroom door and knocked on it with her elbow. "Lucy," she said, "it's Bristol Evergreen, the girl who showed you and your parents to Madame Weatherbury's office." "What do you want?" Lucy groaned from inside. "I have a surprise for you if you'll just open the door," Bristol said. A couple of moments later, Lucy reluctantly opened her bedroom door. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying, and she was very surprised to see the lit-up birthday cake in Bristol's hands. "Happy birthday!" Bristol cheered. "I hope you like chocolate." Unfortunately, her floor mate's reaction was not what Bristol was expecting. "How did you know it was my birthday?" Lucy asked suspiciously. Bristol opened her mouth to respond, but she didn't have any words to explain herself. She was so focused on cheering up Lucy, she had completely forgotten she only knew it was her birthday because she had been eavesdropping. "Didn't you mention it when you arrived?" Bristol asked. "No," Lucy said and folded her arms. "Oh, then it must have been a lucky hunch," Bristol said with a nervous laugh. "Forgive the candles. I assumed you were about 13. Is that right?" Lucy wasn't buying it. "You were eavesdropping on our meeting with Madame Weatherbury, weren't you?" she said, and raised an accusatory finger. Bristol frantically shook her head, but it only made her seem guiltier. Okay, yes," she confessed. "I admit I was eavesdropping. I didn't mean to pry. But I heard your mother talking about the ravens, and I couldn't look away. If we were in a goblin colony, I could have your ears cut off for snooping," Lucy said. "Look, I'm sorry for invading your privacy," Bristol said. "I know what it's like to be dumped in a strange place by a parent. I heard you say it was your birthday, so I thought if I baked you a cake, it might cheer you up. It was a mistake, so I'll leave you alone now. Bristol was furious with herself for handling the situation so poorly. She hurried down the corridor before Lucy had any more reasons to dislike her. Just as Bristol reached the stairs, Lucy stopped her. "Lucky for you, I'm not a girl who turns down sweets," she called. "That cake smells delicious, so I'll forgive your treachery just this once." Lucy opened her bedroom and gestured for Bristol to come inside. Bristol was thrilled for a second chance and rushed inside the bedroom before Lucy changed her mind. As she stepped inside, Bristol had to remind herself she was entering a 13-year-old girl's bedroom because Lucy's chambers looked like a tavern. There was a large billiard table in the center of the floor, a row of dartboards hung on the wall, and just above that was a big sign that said, "Play hard, work hardly." Another wall was covered in musical instruments and dozens of posters that advertised the GOOSE troupe's past performances. Every corner was filled with a massive taxidermy animal that was a morbid hybrid of different species. Last, Bristol noticed that instead of chairs or a bed, the room had bean bags and a hammock. "Wow," Bristol said. "This is quite a room." "I've got eclectic tastes," Lucy said. "That's what happens when you grow up in show business. You get exposed to more than your average child." Lucy pushed two beanbags together and the girls had a seat. Bristol held up the cake and Lucy closed her eyes and blew out the candles. "Do you see a barrel of peppermint cider anywhere?" Lucy asked. No," Bristol said. "Dang, my wish didn't come true." Lucy leaned back on her beanbag and shoveled the chocolate cake into her mouth. Bristol couldn't take her eyes off all the GOOSE troupe posters on the wall behind her. She was fascinated by all the locations Lucy's family had been to. "Have you really performed in all those places?" she asked. "Oh yeah," Lucy bragged, "and those don't include the underground circuit." "What's the underground circuit?" Bristol asked. "You know, the places they don't always include on the map," she explained. "Goblin colonies, troll camps, elf compounds, ogre conventions, you name it. The Gooses have played it." "Gosh, this cake is good." "And the creatures in the in-between didn't hurt you?" "Not at all," Lucy said. "Creatures in the in-between are so desperate for entertainment they wouldn't dare. They're also the best audiences a performer could ask for. Subjugated species always know how to have a good time." "Oh, look," Bristol said and pointed to one of the posters. "You performed in Chariot Hills. That's where I'm from." Lucy clenched her teeth. "Yikes," she said. "The Southern Kingdom is the worst place to perform. They've got all these rules about what artists are allowed to do. We can't sing profanity, we can't play loudly, we can't dance crudely, everyone has to be clothed. It takes all the fun out of it. I can't even bang my tambourine on my hip without being fined. Like, if that's the kind of show you're looking for, just go to church. Am I right?" "I'm not surprised," Bristol said. "I can't tell you how glad I am to be away from it. I would have given anything for a childhood like yours." "Yeah, I've had some good times," Lucy said. "I guess all my adventures are over now that I'm stuck in this place." Lucy stopped eating and looked sadly at the floor. "I wouldn't say that," Bristol said. "You should give this place a chance. It might surprise you." "Easy for you to say. You belong here," Lucy said. "But you heard what Madam Weatherbury told my parents. The academy isn't meant for children like me." Bristol sighed. She understood how Lucy felt more than the girl realized. "To be honest, I'm not sure I belong here either," she said. All of Madame Weatherbury's students have been doing magic their whole lives. I just recently found out I had magical abilities, and I needed the help of an old spell to conjure anything. To make matters worse, I'm apparently the only fairy in the entire world who doesn't have a specialty. Xanthus has his fire, Emeralda has her jewels, Skylene has her water, and Tangerina has her charm, Lucy asked sarcastically. Don't worry about Tangerina, Bristol said. She grows on you after a while. So does fungus. Back to my point, Bristol continued. You're not the only person who feels like they shouldn't be here. I know it seems like Madame Weatherbury made a mistake, but I doubt she would open her doors for us if she didn't genuinely think she could help us. But at least you're a fairy, Lucy said. I'm a witch, Bristol. That means my heart is full of darkness, and all my powers are fueled by evil that's growing inside me. You have no idea what it's like to know that one day, no matter what I do, I'm going to become an ugly and mean old hag. I'm going to spend my adulthood cursing people and collecting cats, and I don't even like cats. The thought made Lucy burst into tears. She rapidly scooped the cake into her mouth to drown her sadness, and within a couple more bites, she had finished the whole plate. Bristol dried Lucy's tears with the corner of her gray and black striped dress. If it makes you feel better, I don't think you're a witch, Bristol said. Are you crazy? Lucy asked. Madame Weatherbury specifically said, Madame Weatherbury never said you were a witch, Bristol said. She just said her academy isn't meant for students like you, and that could mean a number of things. Besides, if you had evil and darkness in your heart, there's no way you would enjoy performing as much as you do. It takes way too much joy and excitement to make audiences happy. Lucy nodded along. An exceptional talent, she sniffled. Don't forget, exceptional talent. Exactly, Bristol said. A wicked old witch would never have that in her. Lucy wiped her nose on Bristol's sleeve and shrugged. I suppose so, she said. If you don't think I'm a witch, then what the heck am I? What's causing all the creepy stuff that happens around me? Bristol tried her best to think of something to put the troubled girl at ease. Maybe you're just a fairy with a specialty for trouble, she said. Lucy thought the suggestion was so ridiculous, the corner of her mouth curled into a tiny grin. Bristol was glad to give Lucy her first smile at the academy. That's the dumbest thing I've heard, Lucy said, but I appreciate the effort. Personally, I think life is way too complicated for anyone's fate to be set in stone, Bristol said. Take it from me. In the last month, I've gone from being a schoolgirl to a maid, to a prisoner, to a correctional facility inmate, and now I'm studying to become a fairy. Whoa, Lucy said. And I thought my life was eventful. I'm just saying, nothing is certain until it is certain, Bristol said. In fact, whether you become an ugly and mean old witch or not, there's only one thing we know for sure. What's that? Lucy asked. Tangerina and Skylene won't think any differently of you. Without missing a beat, Bristol and Lucy both erupted in laughter. They chuckled so hard their stomachs hurt and happy tears ran down their faces. Boy, they must hate my guts, Lucy said. Well, despite my intentions, I'm glad I made at least one friend today. Thanks for being so nice to me, Bristol. Something tells me we're going to be partners in crime for a very, very long time. Me too, Lucy, Bristol said. Me too.